Hi, friends. This is Wendy Harrop, and welcome to the Say Yes to Yourself podcast. On the Say Yes to Yourself podcast, you'll hear stories from women just like us who are adding the practice of saying yes in their daily lives in big and small ways, and as a result, are experiencing the truth that everybody wins when you say yes to yourself. I'm so excited to go on this journey with you, and I look forward to finding a bit of our own story in each other's. Today on the podcast, I am chatting with my friend, Sylvie Mazerolle. Sylvie joined me for almost the entire time that I was in France this past September. She is photographing our cookbook project with my friend Jeff. And she also joined me for a part of the time I was in Paris, and she did portraits of the ladies that went on the trips. And oh my gosh, it was all just so fun. She is a wonderful, free-spirited, beautiful, authentic, genuine, fabulous queen, and has quite the bio to back up that stellar description of her. So Sylvie is a professional photographer with over 15 years experience as a visual artist. 8 of those years were spent as a professional makeup artist in Toronto's film and fashion industry. Now based in Dieppe, New-Brunswick, Canada, you can find her behind the lens, creating beautiful images for others to enjoy. In her photography, she focuses on using natural light as much as possible and trusting in not just what she sees, but how she sees it. She uses both her past experience in color theory and storytelling, as well as her intuition. The results are rich, elegant images that evoke emotion. In addition to traveling, portraits, and food photography, she mentors others on how to unlock their own creativity. She says, "Photographs are the only thing capable of freezing the passing of time in today's fast-paced world. It's a way to slow down and be present. When I am photographing, just for me, it's a form of self-care and art therapy. It can be very meditative. There is beauty everywhere. Slow down and take a moment to appreciate it, taste it, and get to know it. Enjoy a slice of life." I cannot wait for you to hear this conversation and get to know a little bit better my friend Sylvie. Sylvie, I am so excited to see your face. I have not seen you since we were in France together.
I know. I've been buried in editing from all the images from France.
How many images did you take while we were there?
Oh my God, how many? I haven't even tallied everything because it's on different memory cards, and I have them divided in sections and by days and by people. But I want to say usable images, probably around 1,000.
Oh my gosh. How fun.
I know. But I mean, that's the thing about traveling and about, being exposed to new experiences and new stimulation and new things. It's just like everything is new and everything is so exciting and everything is so full of energy. And so you just, you want to capture that. Are they all fine art pieces? No. But are they all beautiful to me? Yes. So I'm, every time I go through a set of a folder or something, it's like, oh my God, I forgot about that day, or I forgot about this, because when you're behind the camera, sometimes you're not present in what's going on. You're more an observer of what's going on. So by seeing, some of those images, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I remember that conversation, and I remember, that joke or that incident, or yeah, so it's pretty cool.
Oh, that's so fun. I can relate to being an observer. As a wedding planner, I was always the girl with the clipboard in the back of the room, behind the photographer, making sure that everything was tucked in and where it should be, and that the bride would be happy with the finished result and not say, why didn't somebody tell me my, flowers were turned or whatever. So to be, for me, in front of the camera, that was different. But also, I loved watching you discover a new place. It was fascinating. I loved it. And I loved the way that you captured the people, the French people, not just the women on our trip, but the restaurant workers or the lady crossing the street or whatever. You were so present, and it was really beautiful to witness.
And that's one of my favorite things, is just to watch and let the moment happen. It's fun to create the moment. Like when I'm doing portraits, I really love creating those moments and bringing it out of the person. But there's also something to be said about just letting it happen and letting that moment, being patient and trusting that the image will, the image that you need to capture will present itself. Yeah, but that takes a lot of practice.
Right. And a lot of waiting around for some magic moment to happen.
And sometimes it doesn't. But you have to be, and that's, kind of another metaphor for life, right? You have to wait for those moments to happen and not sometimes force them to happen.
Right. I loved the way that you invited people into that process as well. I mean, it was very helpful because you speak French. So you had these experiences like with that waiter that was smoking while he was setting tables for the day. And right. You would just say, can I take a picture of you? And he moved out of the way first for you to take a picture of something else. And
I'm like, no, I want you, and I want your cigarette, and I want all of that in the image.
And then to watch them own it, that was really great. So to back up a bit, how did you come to the point where you were able to say yes to yourself and join me in France on this fabulous journey? You're shooting the cookbook and then also photographing the women. And I'd love to hear just about your process and how that was for you to decide to come. And then, how you even got started. Those are two very different subjects, food and people.
They are, but they're connected. Right. But it's a love of life, right? It's my whole thing is called the slice of life, and food and people are interconnected. I mean, what better love language than food? I mean, that's how I grew up with my grandmother, learning how to cook with her. And then my mom was a stay-at-home mom for most of my life. So, watching her make food and making homemade pizza. I didn't have a takeout pizza until I was like in my late teens, maybe 16, before I had a takeout pizza. Like my pizza was always homemade, from the dough to the meats it was hamburger. There was no processed meats. It was, so to me, food and people will always be intertwined together. How did I come about? Well, when you and I met, I told you that I was going to do your portraits because that's what my focus was. And we had planned it. Everything was planned. We were going to go to New York. We were going to go to Deering Barn, and a bunch of us were going to get together and do portraits. And then COVID. And then, like everybody else, we both turned to food. I started photographing food. You started doing your Friday cocktails and your cooking. And I was like, you know what? You and I are going to do a cookbook together. That's what we're going to do.
Perfect.
I didn't know that it was going to be in France.
Where all good things happen.
I had no clue at that point, but by allowing the process and by just trusting that I put it out there, you put it out there, we were going to do this. We didn't know how, we didn't know where, we didn't know when, but the steps just kind of aligned themselves to lending it to that. And how amazing it is to just trust that that's what's meant to happen. if you don't, you have to take steps. Obviously, you have to, prepare yourself. You have to budget financially, all that stuff, which is a whole other thing that I'll tell you about in a minute. But you can't micromanage all of those decisions or all of those things when you have to allow room for flexibility. You have to allow room for spontaneity. And I think that I've lived my life that way my entire life. And sometimes it scares me because I'm like, ooh, I better not say that too many times because someone is listening somewhere and it will happen if I don't watch what I'm saying. But yeah, it's just say, yeah, I want that. Yes, I want that. Yes, that's what I want. And don't be afraid. I mean, like I said, even me, sometimes I'm like, ooh, do I really want that? Because it'll happen. Like it's funny because since that trip, I'm really conscious of what I want and what I don't want. And I'm like, wow, like we made this happen. What else can I make happen? What else do I want to happen? Right? I think that's more the question now. It's like, what do I really want? Because I'm in my 51st year, so I'm halfway. And now I'm like, okay, I only have this much time left. What do I want to do at that time? That time is precious. That time is really precious.
I love that. And I love the permission that you're giving yourself to dream and to be specific and to not limit yourself by what you can see around you. I'm doing A Course in Miracles right now, and there's the introduction of this concept of perception over vision. And a perception is what we see in the world around us, and vision is the divine interpretation of what should be happening and what we are capable of, and what we desire, right? I mean, I believe in God, and God put these desires and dreams in my heart, not because he's mean, but because they're for me. And they are, the easy yes is sometimes a scary yes, because you have to make a decision that you're willing to be that happy. You're willing to have that good thing. You're deserving of that good thing. And that, it doesn't seem like that would be a hard lesson. Go to France. Go to France for a month. Like, that's so, who thinks that's hard?
Go to France for a month when your son is starting the first day of high school and you're leaving on an airplane that same day.
Right.
But you know what? It's the best decision I ever made. He is so much more mature, and I'm going to tear up.
Please.
He's the kid that I've wanted him to be, that I knew he could be, because I wasn't here to micromanage, right? I don't know. I'm like, who is this young man that I came back to 3 weeks after? And he was attentive and he was hugging me and so much more appreciative of my snacks now. But he knows now that he doesn't need me to make those. He loves me to do those snacks for him because, again, food is our love language, but he doesn't need me to do it. And I think that for him was also a big revelation. Like, oh, I don't really need my mom. I like her to be there to do it for me. And it's great that she is. He's doing his own laundry. He's doing his homework. He comes up and checks in. Like, do you need anything? I think it scared him a little bit.
Okay.
Which I think was a good thing.
Right.
It was not a bad scare, but my mom was gone for 3 weeks. Like, what if she was gone for longer? Or what if I lost her? Or I think those things went into his little thought, because he's a very deep kid, a very smart kid. But I think and he told me when I left, you should have done this a long time ago, because I was tearing up when I was at the airport. And he's like, why are you crying? You've been packing for a month. And I said, well, you're 14 years old, and this is the first time I've left you for this long. And he's like, well, maybe you should have done it sooner.
Hmm.
And so to know now that they are okay, I mean, I deep down you know that they're going to be okay, but that mommy guilt or that need to be here for them is so strong as a mom.
Right.
Dads are different, and I'm not saying that for all dads. I'm sure there are dads there that are, just as involved as moms and attached as moms. I can only speak from my own experience. But yeah, no, saying yes to that trip was the best thing I've ever done. And now I don't feel guilty when I do go out, or when I'm not here to make supper, or if I have a meeting, or I'm like, no, you know what? I can go to have coffee with my friend for the entire day and go shopping. I don't have to be here for breakfast, lunch, and supper.
100%.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. High five.
I'm so happy for you.
Yeah, it was a tough thing to do, but I'm so happy I did it. I think that, and one of the other big reasons that I was afraid to say yes is that I may not want to come back. Mm-hmm. And I'll be really honest about that. Like, I love my family. I love them to death. But I've always been a go-getter, and I've always been business oriented. Even as a makeup artist, I mean, you don't make it to top 10 up and coming makeup artists in the world without working for it and without taking the steps and doing, what needs to be done. But after I became a mom, like, it's just, I poured everything into that and forgot about the other part of myself. I've always been, I've always kept my creativity. I've always kept my juices flowing, but to jump in it 100% like I did in France, I hadn't seen that side of me in a long time.
Right. Yeah, I think there's so much to the pattern interrupt and being out of our normal situation and knowing, like really trusting and believing that everyone in our charge at home is just fine. And then allowing yourself to be where your feet are, to be present, to enjoy where you are. Because even at this point, if they're not fine, you're too far away to fix it.
Right?
So let's give someone else a shot at ruling the world and be a hero. And we'll be where we physically are. And I love hearing that was your experience. I love watching it in the women that say yes to themselves on these trips, because they are long. They're 7 or 8 days, and plus travel, and people come in early and stay later. So it's a pretty big pattern interrupt, but I also feel like it takes some time to get where your body arrived a couple of days earlier, not just because of the time change, but just for me, there are no chores. There are no meals that I need to cook. There are no other people or creatures relying on me. There's not a house reliant. I don't even have to clean the bathroom. I'm in a hotel. Like, it's all so different, and it's so glorious. I feel like my ideas come.
There's more room for inspiration. Your mind is freer to accept because you're not in that labyrinth.
Right. It's like a 7-day meditation.
Yeah, exactly. The hard part is keeping it going once you get back.
It's only as hard as we make it.
Right. And I think that's why I said that October kicked my butt. It's only as hard as you make it. There you go.
Right there. It's only as hard as you make it. My coach, Rachel, said that to me, or to us in a group call, and I found that so profound. Of course, I've heard it 100 times, but when you're ready to hear something in a way that has a great impact, then it means something. And I can't even tell you how many times in conversations like this, where I pick up that piece of paper that says it's only as hard as you make it, and hold it up on to the camera, because it is so true. And I appreciate the reminder of that.
Yeah. And even having said yes to that, my husband and I had not taken an escape weekend in other than going to our own cottage. And most of the time it was to clean up the cottage to get it ready for renters, because we used to have an Airbnb. We actually took a getaway weekend after I got back, and we left my son with someone else that weren't even my parents.
Wow.
He stayed with a cousin, and he was there with like her 4-year-old, and he played the big brother part that he always wanted to play. Because he's always asked us for an older brother, which we can't manifest that one. And I'm not having another one at 50 some years old. It was so good for him to be with other people and to be with other manners and other ways of living. My cousin and I are really, really close. I mean, she lives up the street. I used to babysit her as a kid because her mom and I are pretty close in age. And for her to open her home and say, yes, like, we would love to have him over. He got to cook with them. He got to learn a new recipe. Came home, was like, oh, Mom, Natasha made this food and this was so good. And, and Chet's only 4 years old and he was eating it too. And like to see him have other experiences, that's not just like, it's time for us to spread our wings. Right. And experience different things. He even talked about going on an exchange next year. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. There's a short-term exchange, and his 3 options are Finland, Switzerland, and France. So those are his 3 options. And I'm like, buddy, if you want to do that, we're 100%. 100%.
Will you go as a family?
No, we won't, because we're not even allowed. First of all, it's a 3 to 5 week program. And he goes and immerses himself into that family. And then after that, that child comes and immerses themselves into our family. Yep. And he can only do it once he turns 15. So it wouldn't be this summer. It would be next summer. But my husband and I are said, like, okay, so if he gets accepted to Finland, well, we can land in Finland. Doesn't mean we have to stay in Finland.
Right.
By me saying yes to myself, it is allowing him to see a bigger, broader world and options than just, I mean, that's what I've always wanted for him.
That's so beautiful. I know. That's how we know you're not lying.
No, exactly.
That's my telltale sign.
Yeah, that's my telltale sign too.
I love the ripple effects of our decisions. They, of course, your yes was a yes for me. It was a yes for Jeff and the Cookbook project. It was a yes for Susan, who took us to the Brocantes and to Ile de Ré.
I love Susan. Susan and Roddy are amazing.
They totally are. They're so special. Yeah. And they think they're normal. Whatever.
The best kind of normal, if that's normal.
Right? But it was a yes to Mimi, who took us to the Paris flea market. It was a yes to Christian Dior, who didn't even know that one day there would be a museum, and one day you and I would walk in there and you would have a spiritual experience.
I don't know what that was. I still to this day am trying to figure out what that was. That was the most intense life experience other than giving birth to my child. I don't know what that was. That was just something that I have never experienced in my life. I felt so much beauty, and for it to be okay. Because fashion is always viewed as this evil thing or this superficial thing, but it's not. It's art. And art can heal the world. And if it wouldn't be for art, Paris wouldn't even exist.
I feel like in that moment, you were saying yes, and you were answering the question the right way. How good are you willing to feel? How good are you willing to let life get?
Yeah. Yeah. How much permission for beauty? I mean, there's so much stuff going around the world right now, but that moment in that time, in that space, everything was perfect.
I felt so honored to bear witness to that moment. And it's beautiful, right? It's like we're in another country. We can weep in a museum and nobody even
Batted an eye.
no one looked at you. No one thought, oh, ma'am, are you having a seizure? Can I help you with something? Like nothing.
It was an ugly cry. It wasn't just tears. Like it was an ugly, all the emotions that I had suppressed, just everything just flooded. Everything just flooded out. So in that moment of seeing that sketch, because I walked into the museum and it was like, okay, you've got this spiral staircase. At first I thought that was the museum. I thought that was it. And then, to take the elevator to the third floor and to walk out and to see that first sketch, it really hit me. I think that I was in Paris. I think that's kind of that reality that hit me. It's like, holy crap. This is not just a book that you're looking at. This is an original Dior sketch. Like you are here. You are in it. You are in that energy. You're in that beauty. You're in that space. I mean, I grew up watching, there was a TV show when I was a kid on weekends called Fashion Television. And it was all about, the new releases on the runways. And I was there. I was there.
and you got yourself there.
I got myself there. Yeah, exactly. And like in my teens, I was always dressing up in my room and I was always doing these crazy hair and these crazy makeups. And people thought it was crazy because I'm from a very, very small, fishing village where you kind of don't do that stuff. And then my 20-year-old self who took a leap of faith and went to Toronto and became a makeup artist. And I was taking the steps towards that. And then, having put that on hold for 14 years to raise a child. Yeah. So thank you.
I can't believe this is my job.
And then to be able to actually photograph in there, I was so excited to be able to do that too.
Right. I have to say to the sweet women that were on the Paris trip, they moved through that museum with at a different pace than you and I. They were so sweet and they definitely enjoyed the cafe while they waited for us. I could have been in there another 2 days.
Oh, I know. If there was not so much more to see on my last day, I was really debating going back.
I can't wait to take Amelia there. She
Oh my gosh, she's gonna lose her mind.
sketches dresses now. And I got her a sewing machine. And when we were there with Jane in March of this year, we were walking through one of the places where something for Paris Fashion Week was happening. And typically when you see a large crowd of people, you might think, oh, I don't know what's happening. Is there a protest or something? I'm going to move over. But it was the most beautiful crowd of people with giant cameras and fabulous clothes and sunglasses. And you knew people were somebody. And we walked right through the middle of them and Amelia loved it. And so it's definitely something that I want to foster in her and just allow her to grow. Yeah. And whatever delights her, which is so lovely. And how lovely that I like it too.
Bonus.
So good. I know exactly where to take her now.
Definitely a spiritual awakening at Dior.
Right? Highly recommend the Dior Gallery Museum, friends.
If you're into fashion at all, if you're into beauty, if you're into, you may not have the same reaction that I did, but it's worth seeing.
It was
Yeah.
beautiful. So how has it been? You've made some mention of, since you've been back, you've made some mention of just that process. What are you finding on the other side of that? Yes.
It's interesting because I get mad at people because they're like, oh my God, it was a trip of a lifetime. It's like, no, it wasn't. It was an opportunity of a lifetime, but it wasn't a trip. I hope to God it's not a trip of a lifetime, because I plan on doing that again and again and again. And it may not always be in France. It may be to other locations. It's funny how people are so tight and closed-minded about what they can and can't do, or what they will and will not allow into their life. So I actually got mad at one of my aunts. I'm like, what are you talking about? A trip of a lifetime? No, it's not. It was an opportunity of a lifetime. But I plan on having many more of these trips. And she was like, oh, okay then.
Right. This is my new normal.
Yeah. Yeah. If it's not normal for you, that's unfortunate, but it's my normal for me. And I've always been able to do, and people are like, oh, well, you have a horseshoe up your butt. And I'm like, no, I don't.
What is that?
Right?
That sounds awful. I don't even know what that
Sounds
means.
painful. Apparently horseshoes are lucky, I guess. I don't know.
That seems like a very unlucky thing to have happen to you, if that means you're lucky.
It's about setting goals, having a vision, taking the steps towards it, and having complete and utter faith that it can be.
Right.
It may not always be exactly how you think it's going to be or going to happen. Hence you and I talking about doing a cookbook, but it turned out not to be yours.
Right.
But it was still us collaborating together and doing it. It wasn't going to your barn to do portraits with a bunch of women, but we did portraits with a bunch of women.
Yes, we did. That is the beauty of surrender.
Yeah.
I have really good ideas. God has better ones. So I'm here. I can say what I want to happen, how I want to feel, what I want to see. And then the how is not my responsibility. Not only is that a complete relief, because the how it's not my favorite part of the whole like dream and then figure out how to get there. I like the dream part, but it's also not my responsibility because I have limits and God does not. So surrendering to that process, it is not giving up, it's giving over and believing that it's going to be way better than we imagined. There's one of my favorite Bible verses, Ephesians 3:20. It's like, he is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine. Okay, yes, please. I would like that. Thank you very much.
And it's funny because, like I said, October was kind of a rough re-entry because you're faced with all of that energy that you left yourself, like you took yourself out of, and then you come back and it's like, okay, I'm back in my house, back in my small town, back in my and you kind of like go back into yourself. And I've had, since my grandmother passed away, I'm like, I owe it to her. I owe it to her to make everything I want to make happen, because that's how she lived. Yeah, she lived big. She didn't have big means, but she had big life. So you have to trust. I always limit myself based on my age. Yeah. And it's like, well, especially in the fashion industry, especially in, that kind of superficial, again, people call superficial kind of world. It's based on the young people, technology, it's always younger people that know more how to do it and all that. But then when I talk to young people, they're like, well, I'm talking about me. I say we, but it's me. Limit myself to possibilities because I'm 50 plus and I've got my gray hair, and the younger people are also, they're intimidated by our age because we are so powerful, and we are so much wisdom and so much. In French, it's called du vécu, stuff that you've lived through and lived, beyond. I'm really trying to not let that bother me anymore, my age, because it is just a number.
Right.
It doesn't define who I am.
Right.
So I'm now allowing myself to dream big again. By becoming, a makeup artist, I was in my mid-20s. I had nothing to lose. It was like I left for Toronto with a Honda and $500 in my bank account, right? Like that's all I had. If I lost it, big deal. But it seems like, the more we live, the more we have, the more we've accumulated, the more we have to lose.
Mm.
But do we want to be tied down by those things? Do we really care about those things? Does it matter if I don't have this house? It's things that you have to really think about. I'm really going deeper than I've ever gone.
Right. And I think there's also a question that you can ask of, does my decision to have what I want result in losing everything I already know? Why is your house now not available to you because you're following your dream? I think that's one thing that stops us, is that we're in this illusion that it's a trade. Like you can't have something really good without doing the work, do the hard work, get the client, whatever it is, do the time, get the degree, all the things that there's this cause and effect. And I think we can have, do, and be anything that we desire, all that we desire, and we can have it now. If this is the time for us to have it, we can collapse the timeline between where we are and where we want to be. And there doesn't have to be this giant sacrifice. It's not or, it's and.
Yeah. Like right now, I really need a bigger space to create. I have outgrown my space.
And so it is.
And so it is. And I almost feel like I've outgrown my house as well. Like I stand in this house and it feels so small now. And it's not a small house. It's a 3-bedroom house in the burbs. It's an average house. But I stand in it and I'm like, I have outgrown you. I have outgrown this space. I feel like a hermit crab that needs a bigger shell.
Right. And I love that analogy. And I love that is not, it's just an evolution. It's not a losing everything. It's choosing something better.
Yeah. And it's not, I don't have to make the sacrifice of like, oh, well, then if I take the space that's outside, my husband's going to lose his workspace. And it's like, why? No, let's just have a bigger house that has bigger rooms and a bigger shed and a space for my studio. And right, like now that my son's not bound by the school district because he's in high school, we have a bigger range of area where we can look. It's not always easy to convince the other half, but
the how is not your responsibility.
How is not my responsibility. So I'm actually now, I literally said, you know what? I want a bigger space. I don't have to be. At first I was like, oh, but if I want a bigger space, that means a bigger mortgage. That means I have to pay more. And it's like, no, it doesn't mean any of that.
That's right.
It just means that I'm allowed to have a bigger space and it's out there for me. And it might be better. It might actually, be a little outside of the city and not have as many high tax. Like it may work out for the better. But if I limit myself to thinking small, then that's what I'll have.
Our words are so powerful. Even in that sentence, it may be better. It may be, no, it will.
It will.
It will be better. It will find me. It will be exactly where I'm supposed to be. And the things we say out loud, even, this is so fascinating. So I'm sure because of my amazing podcast production team, who will be editing the times that our connection hasn't been good and we've had to repeat things. I love the sentences that you've had to repeat.
Right.
Because I think they're just so good. Like, get it in there. I desire bigger space. I want a bigger space. Like, hooray. Yes. Yes. And you're allowed. And anyone who says you're not allowed, that has everything to do with them.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with you. And you wanting something fabulous does not take away from what anybody else wants or gets or is eligible for or deserve. Has nothing to do with anybody else. It's everybody wins. Because once we have that mindset of, I want my life to be great, I know what I desire and it's a lovely thing, and I'm not being selfish and I'm not being a jerk, and you didn't not make arrangements for your husband and child while you went. You didn't just say, figure it out, people, I'm out. You're gracious, you're elegant, you did it the way that you do it, and they thrived. You thrived. Both parties took quantum leaps in their human existence because you went away.
I can feel the independence in the house.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Like I literally can feel it. I have no guilt anymore about sitting and editing during the time when my son comes home from school. He'll come up, he'll put his arm around my shoulder, he'll kiss me on the cheek. How was your day, Mom? He goes to the fridge, he grabs his snack, and it's like, thank you.
Right?
Thank you very much for that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. Well, I could obviously talk to you all day long, since our 3.5 weeks was not long enough in France.
We didn't have time to talk. We were busy working.
We were, but it was fun. We had a few train rides to catch up on. But
the other thing that I said yes to myself, I finally, after 12 years of doing photography, have bought a flash.
I'm so happy for you.
Me too. Because one thing that we learned, these old French houses don't have big window spaces. So I got really frustrated by that because I was frustrated with my limitations. Mm-hmm. And I bought a flash and I've been working with it, and I have enrolled in a class, and it is brilliant.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my, no, my images are like 10 times better.
I love that. Another line from the Course in Miracles talks about overwhelm or frustration is just a sign that another solution exists.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God, that's so good.
Right? So don't,
so
if you're frustrated, stop and say, oh my gosh, thank you. There's a better solution exists.
That's the wrong door. I should be knocking at that one. Yeah.
Stop banging your head on the door and go open the one that's unlocked over here.
Exactly. No, I'm really, really, really enjoying it. That's so thank you.
Amazing. Well, and it's just fitting since you are the hot flash photographer.
Right? I had to put a flash in there.
So good.
No, I was terrified of it because of the stories that I was telling myself. Having worked with other photographers as a makeup artist and seeing them having like 10 different lighting setups, and it was really overwhelming. But I found someone who's good, and my husband's a lighting technician, so you would think that I would know. But when he talks, he doesn't use my language, so it sounds like the Charlie Brown wah 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 wah. But this woman, her name is Joni Simon from the Bite Shot. She's amazing. She's in Arizona, and she just breaks it down so easily and so simply, and it's not complicated at all. But I was telling myself that narrative.
That's good stuff, Queen.
And very good stuff.
Oh man, I love it. Get on in there with the flashlight. No shadows allowed.
No.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. Well, I have loved this conversation. Please share how people can find you, how they can follow your work, how they can see the fun images that you took of us in France, all those good things.
Yes. Well, you can check my website. It's Sylvie, Sylvie, Mazerolle, Mazerolle.com for my website. Everything else is under that same handle at Sylvie.Mazerolle on Instagram. You can sign up for my website. I'm still sending out postcards from Paris because there's so many images to share. I'm also working on possibly launching again my 12-week creative unfolding your creativities to help people with creative blocks and how to navigate through them and how to get over them with some exercises. And it's a 12-week workshop. So I'm going to be launching that one in January. I'm thinking mid-January after Christmas to get us through that, spring kind of lull.
Right. Is that the one that you did that was based on the Artist's Way?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I had some really, really, really good feedback from the women who took that with me during COVID. And I mean, during COVID, you couldn't even do anything. And this requires you going out for artist dates and, that kind of stuff. So for them to have that much breakthrough, even during COVID. So I think that this will be, and it's funny because I was talking to someone this week. I went to a conference in Cape Breton, which, oh my God, can I just say that's another thing. I haven't even visited my own country that much. Cape Breton is about 6 hours away. Drive, which I can fly to Paris for 6 hours.
Right. I know. Decisions.
Right. But what a beautiful, beautiful part of the world. So I was talking to one woman there and she was saying that she actually feels broken after COVID because she's forgotten how to even allow herself to take the steps to live life again.
Oh my.
And I think a lot of people feel that way. I hadn't even thought about that, but we've been so programmed to stay home and to stay in our comfort zone and to stay safe that people are afraid to step out, right? And some people couldn't wait to step out, but there are other people who are still kind of intimidated by that. So I'm thinking of offering that course again in January. And yeah, just, contact me. I'm an open book.
That's so great. Yes. If anyone is planning a trip and they just wish someone was following them around with the camera, Sylvie is your girl because it is so fun to have someone follow you around with the camera.
Or if you want to invite me to get a group together and you want me to help you navigate your camera, I can do that too.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Sylvie. I cannot wait until the next time we're together.
Yay! We have to talk about that soon, actually.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. As always, any links or notes mentioned can be found at phineaswrighthouse.com in the podcast section of our site or in the show notes below. And if you haven't connected with me personally, come find me on Instagram at Phineas Wright House and let me know you listened to this episode. I'd love to get to know you. Thank you for sharing this time with me. I know your days are full, and I'm really grateful that you chose to spend some of your precious time right here. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any of these delightful conversations. I'll see you next week.